Welcome to our new educational video series, and today we are going to talk about cardio, the double edged sword for body composition. So, what we are going to cover today, we are going to talk about what is cardio and what it's not. We are going to talk about the different training intensity so that you better understand what happens when you do cardio. And we are going to talk about why it's good for body composition, what kind of benefits you can have from cardio, but also why it can backfire if you don't use it with the right intention. So, first off, what is cardio? It's a training modality that stresses the cardiovascular and respiratory system. Um, it's not only like a training modality, it can also be like any activity that stresses the cardiovascular and respiratory system. But in the context of body composition, then we talk mainly about training. It's also a type of movement that is mostly concentric. So, the concentric phase of any movement is when you increase the tension in the muscle when the muscle gets shortened, as opposed to the eccentric phase where the tension increases when the muscle get lengthened. And cardio is almost always concentric by nature, and this is where you have the most load happening in the movement. It's also cyclical in nature. It means that you're going to repeat a specific movement or pattern over and over and over and over again. And it's also something that is effective when you use it with the right intention. And by effective, I don't only mean effective for body composition, but it's also effective um, for health and for fitness. That being said, what cardio is not? It's anything that increases the heart rate. And here down below, you can see on the right side, it's the villain from the book by Stephen King, and like a horror movie is something that could increase your heart rate, but it's not cardio. Sauna, for example, also increases your heart rate, but it's not really a cardio activity. um, Cardio is also not a strength training circuit. And the reason why that is because when you use weight, your heart rate is going to increase, but mainly because blood gets trapped into your muscle. That's basically the pump, and it's not as much muscle that comes back to the heart. And the way the heart beats is when you have a lot of blood coming back to the heart, it's going to stretch the heart walls, and at some point you have a stretch reflex, and the heart is going to pump the blood out and contract. And in the case of a strength training circuit, then less and less and less blood comes back to the heart because the blood gets trapped into the muscle. And it means that your heart has to pump faster and faster and faster, but it pumps less and less and less blood, which is not good because it's not the proper kind of stimulus you want to have on your heart muscle. Cardio is also not a mean to burn as many calories as possible. So, this is super important. If the only idea that you have from cardio is to burn as many calories as possible, possibly in the shortest amount of time, then this is going to backfire. It's a guaranteed 100%. So, we are going to talk about that a bit later in the presentation. But if you have like any belief that cardio is going to help you burn calories, then it's definitely not a belief that's helpful to look your best and to be your healthiest. So please get rid of that as fast as you can. And finally, cardio is not bad. So we've heard quite a lot that cardio can kill your gains or that it makes you lose soft and that kind of stuff, but it's actually not true. You just have to know how to use it and be intentional about it. And to do this, you have to know a bit more about the different training intensities. So the first intensity, and it's kind of intensity 0, is when you do nothing. Your heart is still beating. It's actually not really a training, but it's like the baseline. It's base 0. Then we have like the intensity where you start to walk. You are being active, and for most people it's not really a stimulus because it's not exceeding the capacity that we have, but it's still some form of intensity that is very, very low. The next one is a low intensity cardio that you could do for hours on end. So it's going to be slightly faster than walking, and it's going to raise your heartbeat just a bit, but not too much. So to give you an idea, this is around when your heartbeat is around like 90 to 110, depending on your age and your training status. um, Maybe 120. And then we have the mid intensity that you can sustain for quite long, but you have to take a break every now and then because it feels good, but also because it would be an intensity that's it becomes difficult to sustain over time if we just keep going at that intensity. And you can already feel that your breathing pattern is going to be a bit different, that you have to take in more air, and that you're breathing more heavily. Then we have like the high intensity. It's something that you can do for a few minutes at a time, but then you have to take a break because it's just too intense. So maybe up to 5 minutes, and then you have to just chill, catch yourself, and then you can go again. So this is typical HIIT training, high intensity interval training, spinning classes, that kind of stuff. And then lastly, the highest intensity, it's an all-out sprints that you can only hold for a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds. For people that are very well trained, it's going to be like 45 up to 60 seconds, but not much more. And to give you a better idea of what happens when you do cardio under the hood, like in your body, I'm going to show you my own data. And this is what happens. So you can see from left to right, it's the intensity that's increased over time. Then from bottom to top, it's the heart rate that increases. And you can see there the blue line is how many carbs I'm burning during that session and how many fats I'm burning during that session. And basically, what we did was a test on a bike, and the intensity increased by 1 watt every minute. And the goal was to go as long and as high as possible as far as intensity goes. And I was breathing through a mask that analyzes my the air that I take in and that I breathe out, to see how much of that air, how much air I'm taking in, how much oxygen I'm using from the air that I get in, and how much CO2 I'm breathing out. So without going into too much detail, the more carbs you burn, the more CO2 you are going to breathe out, and the more fat you burn, the less CO2 you are going to breathe out. And as you can see, at the lowest intensity, I'm burning more fat, and the more the intensity increases, the more I'm going to burn carbs, and the less I'm going to burn fat. And this is something that you want to keep in mind. So the higher the intensity of your training is, the more carbs you are going to burn. And this is something that we can see. So it was during the same test, and we can see basically with the intensity and with the heart rate increasing over time, how much air I'm taking in, how much oxygen I'm taking in, and how much CO2 I'm breathing out. And then at some point, it was just too much. I could not keep up. so I had to stop. And this correlates, like how much oxygen you are taking in and using correlates pretty well with how many calories you are burning during exercise. And for me, this is what you can see. So it's basically the different zones that I described before. And when my heart rate is between 70 and 110, I'm burning already 533 calories per hour. And you can see that when I increase that intensity, the most that I'm burning per hour is 1065 calories. Now, obviously, and the highest intensity is not something that I can just sustain for 1 hour at a time, but probably I could sustain the mid range, like the yellow intensity. I could sustain that for a steady state for quite a long time. And I would be burning like almost 800 calories in an hour doing this. So 800 calories is a big meal. It's like a big pizza. So this is to give you an idea of what's happening when you do cardio, and like those are my numbers. I'm a bit bigger than most women, so I'm also burning a bit more. But even for women, the numbers are going to be between 300 calories and 800 calories for most of them. Now, why it's good for body composition is because when you do cardio, it's going to improve your metabolism if you fuel your training session correctly and if you do it in the right amount. And what I mean by that is you want to be intentional about the intensity. Let's go back one slide. So the idea that a lot of people have is I want to burn as many calories as possible. So I go on the treadmill, I go as fast as I can for as long as I can. And most of the time it's going to be that kind of intensity, like the yellow one and the mid range. And the problem with that is that it's going to create a lot of fatigue, and it's something that is difficult to recover from. And it should not be done continuously for a long period of time, without break and always training in that intensity, because otherwise you're just going to burn your reserve of energy, create a lot of stress, because your body has to increase stress hormones to provide you with the energy that you need, that you are burning when you are doing this. And yeah, it's really hard to recover from when you do too much of it. So still, when you do the right intensities, for example, you stay at a lower intensity, you can stay there for a bit longer, and you are going to burn more fat during this, and it's going to kind of change your enzymes and the way your metabolism works. And this is going to help you be more efficient outside of your training. So it means that when you are just at work, but most importantly, when you are sleeping, your body is going to be more efficient, and at using oxygen and at using the energy that you have on yourself, like in your reserves. And it means that your metabolism is going to be better, to become better over time. That's exactly what I said. The low intensity is going to build up your work capacity, so you are going to be able to handle more work. It's not only the work that you do in the gym, but it's also like the stress you have in your life. So if you have like a very good base of that low intensity cardio, then you are just going to be able to endure more stuff, be it the training, but also like more stresses in your life. And you are going to be able to push a bit harder during your training sessions, which means you are going to have a bigger training effect. And if you have that base and if you have a well working metabolism, then it also means that the high intensity stuff that you do is going to improve your ability to lose body fat, to get rid of body fat, and it's not going to drain you. and to make you overly stressed. So basically what you want to do is spend most of your time in the lower intensity. And for most people, when we don't have like a physiological test like I did, we recommend to stay at around 115. This is where most people are going to see to get benefits. And it's kind of difficult to do because it's very slow for most people. It's going to be just kind of boring. So because you have to slow yourself down. Most people intuitively are going to go faster, but it's just too fast for what they can actually handle because it's a zone that's never trained. So spend most of your time doing cardio and that lower zone, lower intensity. It's something that you can do during your warm up before your strength training. You can add like 20, 30 minutes after your strength training, staying in that zone and really watching your heart rate to stay in that intensity. And it's really going to be helpful over time to accumulate that kind of volume at that intensity. It's going to increase your capacity, your recovery is going to be better. It has a whole lot of benefits, but it really takes a bit of effort to stay at that intensity because it's lower than what most people would do. And now, that being said, we want to also look at why cardio can backfire. And the reason why it can backfire is there are a few. The first one is because of the amount of repetition, there's a high mechanical cost. And this is especially true with running. So you do a lot of repetition. As an example, if you do squats in your training, then if you do like 5 times 10 reps, 5 sets of 10 reps, it's considered quite high volume. It's 50 reps in one session. Then maybe you do 3 times 12 leg extension. It's going to be 36 reps on top, so it's going to be 86 reps for your quads in that one training session. That's already plenty to have a very good training stimulus. When you go running, if you say like, hey, I'm just going to run 5k, then you are going to do 2,500 repetition on one leg and then 2,500 repetition on the other leg. So it's a huge amount. It's big. And then every time that you land on your leg, you have like almost 2-3 times your body weight that you have to carry. So it's a big impact. And this is going to be very taxing, especially if this is something that you've never done before. So it's very easy to do too much of it because then we say, hey, I want to do cardio. Hybrid training is very popular at the moment. We start doing this and then it's just too much. Like the same for the bike, you are going to do a lot of repetition. And this is definitely something that can at first add fatigue if we just go and do too much of it. The second reason, and this is also very, very important, is because most training form miss the very high intensity and the low intensity. A lot of it is done right in the middle, and it just creates a lot of fatigue with little adaptations that we want. So, for example, a spinning class or a dance class or a body pump class, that kind of stuff, your heart is going to pump quite high. The heart rate is going to be quite high, but it's never going to be a very, very high intensity. It's not close enough to a full out sprint, but it's also never in the lower end, in the low intensity. So you actually just get stuck in the range where you burn a lot of carbs. You don't produce a lot of lactate because this is lactate production is one of the things that's going to help you have adaptation that are very good for your metabolism and also for body composition, but it's at the very, very high end of the intensity. And you also don't stay in the range where you have a bit more fat burning in the lower intensity. So you actually miss the two zones that we want to improve body composition, because the lower range of the intensity is going to help you improve work capacity and recovery, and the highest range of intensity will help you get rid of body fat a bit easier And the problem with most classes is that they are right in the middle. So you do burn more calories with it, you sweat a lot, you feel like you've done something, but you miss out on the adaptation that are actually going to be helpful to create the body that we want. And lastly, it's very easy to create a massive energy deficit. So um, for me, when I go into the higher intensity, I burn like 700 calories per hour. And this is something that I can hold for 1 hour. But I'm only able to take up like 80 grams of carbs per hour. More than that, it's going to be difficult for my gut. And 80 grams of carbs are 320 calories. So if you say, hey, I'm going for a long bike ride and I'm going to try to burn calories, and you do it for 1.5 or 2 hours, it's absolutely possible to create a calorie deficit of 800,000 calories in that one session. And this is going to be very difficult to recover from and to take into account with the rest of your calories and of your week. So you have to be careful when you do this. And this is something that can also happen when you do shorter sessions, but that are very intense. So what you want to do is try to spend more time at a low intensity, because most people just don't do that. And when you do some higher intensity, then really try to go at the very high intensity for up to 30 seconds. And you always want to fuel your sessions. So before your training session and during, have some intra workout carbs. This is going to be very, very helpful to prevent being in a massive calorie deficit afterwards, to have too much stress hormones that are being produced. And it's also going to help you have more adaptation from the training, because it's fueled and your body can create the enzymes and the new mitochondria in your cell, and so forth and so on, if you have the fuel that allow you to do that. So what we like to do is start at um, half your body weight in kilos per hour in grams of carbs. If you are in pounds, then it's going to be around a 0.22. So maybe a quarter of your body weight in pound before you do your cardio session and during, and per hour. So it means if you go for a run and your run is 2 hour, then you definitely want to have enough fuel for the 2 hours, not just like before and then forget about it, but you want to have those fueling strategies for the whole training session. Yeah, I hope this helps and it sheds some lights on cardio training. If you have any questions, then drop them below, and happy cardio.